Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 321, cover dated February 1995. And this is, as the cover caption makes plain, part 3 of Legion Quest, and it is the penultimate chapter. So the cover here is by Ian Churchill, inked by Dan Panosian, and obviously it features Cable and Bishop, but it's very unclear what's going on the cover. Is Cable attacking Bishop? What's happening? Unclear. But when we get into the issue itself, it's revealed what was going on in this somewhat confusing cover image. So let's open this one up to the splash page. And this picks up from the end of X-Men number 40. That's adjectiveless X-Men number 40. And we have Magneto and Professor X in a bar in Haifa, Israel, in the early to mid 70s, 20 years in the past of the X-Men's present of the time. And these two new friends are discussing the possibility that there is a new species of humans, Homo superiors, that they exist. And Magneto is skeptical about the possibility that there could be a peaceful integration of these new humans with the rest of the race. He says, "Charles, humans cannot live in harmony with each other. A new race would hardly enter a level playing field. Homo superiors, if they exist, will need to stake a hard claim to the world if they expect to survive." So in this era, neither knows that the other is a mutant. And so they are both playing a game whereby they are pretending to each other in a certain fashion that there is perhaps no new species. The creative team here: Scott Lobdell plot, Mark Waid dialogue. That's the same as the previous issue of Uncanny X-Men. Lobdell hard at work on Age of Apocalypse, which of course Legion Quest is a prologue to. Ron Garney, guest penciler here, and does a great job in this issue. Tim Townsend, Dan Green, and Joe Rubinstein on inks. Rubinstein's surname spelt wrong there. By Chris Eliopoulos, who's returning from his honeymoon. Steve Buccellato colors. I'll point out when the various inkers come on board. This is Tim Townsend here working on the splash page. Just one little note before I move on, that what's Magneto's preferred drink there? It is vodka. So that's what he likes to drink, and it looks like they've had a few there at the bar. Title of the story: Auld Lang Syne, Old Times. So what happens in the bar is we have a little bit of a kerfuffle, so to speak, and it all goes back to this war veteran who's been playing his flute here for the appreciation of the bar, and they start throwing coins at him, and Professor X doesn't like that at all. And some of the patrons of the bar berate the legless man, call him a gimp, and Professor X says, "I don't like the word gimp." But Magneto wants him to sit down, and then what tears it is this huge fat slob of a guy pouring his beer on top of the war vet's head, and Professor X tells him to leave the poor guy alone, and steps in with his own hand restraining the guy and twisting him onto the table. So he takes money and puts it in the hand of the veteran and tells him to go. And the fat guy here says, "Go. No one is leaving here until some scores get settled. American, get off of me." And Professor X says, "Don't worry, large man. Your friends are coming. In fact, one of them plans a surprise attack even as we speak." Great art on this page by Ron Garney. I am a big fan of Ron Garney. He was coming off a run on Ghost Rider, the Dan Ketch Ghost Rider, and an alumnus of the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning as well. So you might see a little bit of a Kubert style to his pencils here. And what's also notable is that this is, as far as I know, his first collaboration with Mark Waid, so to speak. Mark Waid just putting the dialogue in for Lobdell's plot. And this in advance of their work on Captain America right before Heroes Reborn. And that aborted collaboration between the pair, because Rob Liefeld got the rights to take over Captain America for a year. That was rightly regarded at the time as a very good run on the character, and one that kind of made the case that Rob Liefeld wasn't required. And as soon as Liefeld was off Captain America, and it was finished out by Jim Lee and his Wildstorm studio, and the whole year of Heroes Reborn ran through, who came back to work on Captain America except for Mark Waid and Ron Garney, and they did a very good job on the return too. So now we get the bar fight, and Professor X proving to be, in his youth, a tough man, and one with some fighting skills as well. He's able to block the chair that is whacked off his forearm there, kicks the guy away. So he's got some physical skills. Magneto steps in though. He says, "My friend has his hands rather full at the moment. Perhaps you'd better deliver your message to me, to these guys who are going to, who were determined to take on Professor X in a group." So Magneto thinks, watch this guy. He'll back down, but he doesn't. So he clocks Magneto in the jaw. Magneto looks kind of pleased there. He says, apparently I was mistaken. Good. So let's see. Okay, here we really get into this bar fight. That's a great anchor image of Magneto doing an uppercut to the guy's jaw, and really good work here by Ron Garney. And at this point, he's been inked by Dan Green. You see that distinctive Dan Green brush line on the shadow on the nose, on the shadowing, the spotting of blacks on the tendons and sinews of the arm there. Very distinctive Dan Green work. So more of the bar fight here, and of course Professor X and Magneto win the day, and they agree that Magneto's impressed that Professor X is a man of conviction. What was that you said again earlier in the scene? Any dream worth having is a dream worth fighting for. Professor X finishes out, and Magneto grabs him by the shoulder and says, "Fine and noble words, my friend. Someday I'll carve them on your tombstone." And that proves ironically ominous in respect of the conclusion of Legion Quest. And then we're back in the present. So at the end of X-Men number 40, Lilandra arrived on a Shi'ar spacecraft and warned the X-Men in the present, and Professor X in the present, that Legion had gone, his son Legion, David Haller, had gone into the past and was determined to change it. And this is of course an omniversal threat, which prompted 7 Watchers to turn up and hammer home the seriousness of the threat. So the X-Men here, in tandem with Shi'ar technology, have developed a piece of equipment that is going to augment and coordinate the various side powers of Jean, Professor X, and Cable here, who arrived to assist Professor X in X-Men number 40. So Beast here explains how the whole thing is going to work, while Charles telepathically jumpstarts Cable's latent time travel abilities. With luck, Cable's mind will be projected through the decades, allowing his ambient consciousness to find our wayward teammates wherever they may be lost, and warn them that they must thwart Legion's machinations immediately, if not sooner. So that's the plan. And of course, one is reminded of Days of Future Past and adult Kitty Pryde traveling to the past, her soul traveling to the past and taking over her teenaged body in order to warn the X-Men of the dystopian future that would come to pass if Senator Robert Kelly and Professor X were assassinated back in 1984. So here we've got Gambit and Rogue. They're not really centrally involved in this serious business, so they catch the reader up there in their dialogue about what's been going on in the previous parts of the Legion Quest storyline. as does Archangel here as well. And he's most determined that the X-Men lost in the past, the 4 X-Men, Storm, Psylocke, Iceman and Bishop, will also be rescued. So Scott kisses Jean good luck, and then they attempt to get the machine to work, and it does, in this great anchor image here by Ron Garney, and still Dan Green on the inks for this portion. So then we shift to the past, and we also have a shift of inker too. Now we've got Joe Rubinstein coming on board for the inks for the rest of the issue, more or less. So we're back in Haifa, 20 years in the past. The 4 X-Men that I mentioned who tagged along with Legion to the past have lost their memories, but they know their names now, and they have accessed their mutant powers, and they're posing as civilians, here working on the docks, Iceman and Bishop, Iceman having grown a beard there as well. And they have a little kind of covert meeting with the X-Women here, Psylocke and Storm, and Bishop is very impatient about the progress they're making in determining what their origin is or their purpose in the past. And Psylocke tells Bishop to lay off unless you want a psionic blade between your skull, probably. And Storm tells Betsy to relax, and sums it all up. Everyone's nerves are equally raw, Bishop. We all long for answers, but for the moment, our opportunities for discovery are limited. We must cling to the hope that we are where we are for a reason, one that will become clear eventually. So time is passing, and they haven't figured things out yet for themselves. Elsewhere, on a ferry boat, we have Professor X and Magneto again. And I really like the angle here by Ron Garney on this ferry boat. This I wonder, did he eyeball this? Kind of like a fisheye angle on the curve of the side of the boat. It looks really, really good. So they're here talking about Charles's relationship with Gabrielle Haller, and Charles himself was worried about the ethics of the relationship. He says ethical doctors don't fall in love with their patients. Professor X has been helping her with the trauma she experienced during the Holocaust, and Magnus says to him, Gabrielle Haller isn't a case file, Charles. She's a marvelous woman, alive and radiant. I understand that she, like myself, was a victim of incredible cruelty. I know the horrors she must have witnessed. I know the emptiness and loss she must have felt. She does not want to be alone in this world. So Charles concludes, so if Gabrielle is my last chance at happiness, you would be a fool, says Magnus, to let her slip away. Life is short, Charles. And again, that's ironically ominous. I want to see your dreams fulfilled, he said. Then you'll accompany me to the hospital? Absolutely. So they're coming up to the dockside beside the hospital. The boat is arriving, but something's going on there. And Gabrielle is in the garden of the hospital garden. And there's a little bit of digital colouring effect here on the tiles on the floor. And suddenly she sees Legion here, as we're familiar with him, with his costume and, of course, his spiky hair and these glowing eyes as well. And it takes her by shock and surprise. And here we've got something that's pretty gruesome and controversial that happens in the story now at this point. So Legion transforms himself to appear psychically as Charles to Gabrielle. And of course they're lovers. And so he basically starts kissing her. And she asks him, Charles, don't call me Charles, he says, not tonight. What is going on here? What is the implication of this? Well, to use maybe a Claremontian sort of euphemistic phrase, it seems like Legion is carnally violating his own mother in the past. And that's completely unexpected and bizarre. And there's a very deep implication that he might be fathering himself in the past. It's bizarre. It's weird. But he really is messing up the past by being there, that's for sure. And then we pick up with Bishop on the docks, working his civilian job on the docks, and he's passed by none other than Magnus and Charles, and they're in conversation when Charles suddenly senses a monstrous darkness. And Magneto, of course, asks him, "What do you mean, sense? What?" And again, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Neither has shared with the other that they're mutants, even though they're good friends. So Charles realizes Gabby's in trouble, and they race after her. And let's see. So back on the dock, though, we're going to get the explanation of the cover image. Bishop's working away, and then suddenly there appears Cable. And Bishop gets a memory flash. And Cable says, "Bishop, why you?" "Of course, temporal anomaly. Most obvious anchor to draw me." Because, of course, Bishop is from the end of the 21st century. So his being in the early to mid-70s in Israel, he's like a double time anomaly figure. So apparently that fact has drawn Cable to him. And Cable suddenly frozen by Storm arriving, Iceman, and Psylocke. This is a great anchor image here as well. Inked by Joe Rubinstein, for sure, on this page. And what happens is now we see the scene from the cover where Cable touches Bishop in the face and tries to jog his memory. You know, it's the simplest way to put it. You've got to wake up from your haze, he says to Bishop, and you've got to stop him. That's Legion. You've got to. And so he his final injunction to Bishop and all of them is to remember, and then he winks out of the past. He's gone back to the present. And then we switch back to the hospital garden, and we have Charles and Magnus arriving. And look at this, look at the drawing here. It looks like Gabby's clothes have been ripped in the encounter, which implies violence on the part of Legion. And then he appears in his own guise here. Charles says to Gabby, who's crying there, "I'm here, Gabby, and so is Eric." And she says, "Charles, it's really you?" And Legion says, "Not for long. I've come far for you, Eric Magnus Lensher. In my tomorrow, you will become the greatest villain the world has ever known. And for that, you must die today." So this is the setup for the finale in X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men, number 41. And interesting, just a little detail here, Ron Garney drawing these faces on the side of this ceramic container for this little bush here. But it looks like Magneto's face and Professor X's face. I wonder, is that deliberate or happenstance? So there you go. I think this chapter of the Legion Quest storyline is more plot focused again. I don't think Lobdell was too terribly interested in developing characters, except that youthful friendship between Professor X and Magneto. We get more of that, and we get at this point a vision of Magneto before he becomes a hardline mutant supremacist, and that's going to be very important in terms of what Legion does and how he changes the future by his action in the finale of Legion Quest. Here we've got an advertisement for all the new titles, because all the old X titles, they're quote-unquote cancelled and replaced by this array of new ones. From Uncanny X-Men will become Astonishing X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men will become the Amazing X-Men, and so on and so forth. And then it all begins with X-Men Alpha. That's our introduction to the Age of Apocalypse. So it's all coming, and it's pretty exciting. Even now, 30 years later, the build-up to Age of Apocalypse, which was a Marvel event, an X-Book, X-Office event that I, at the time, thoroughly enjoyed. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 321. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.